Ireland. O'Gara wants it. So does O'Driscoll here. Woods out wide. Straight into Gregan. Bumps him off. Great charge there by the Irish skipper. O'Gara again. And Foley. They were getting in each other's way, and Australia counters here for Roth. Here's Larkham. And Roth on the loop. Kept it in play. Before it finally slipped over the touchline.
Well, smart thinking from Joe Roth early on. He thought that he was going to kick long, and then he heard the call that the counter-attack was on, and Steve Larkham chose to go himself. Lovely little kick ahead by Joe Roth. Just couldn't stay in, and had he got his foot to it, he might have been away. But a good defence early on from Australia. Ireland been coming at Australia now, but Australia been holding their defensive pattern well.
But isn't it sensational? Australia are counter-attacking from all over the place. They're wanting to throw it around. It's great stuff.
Well, we haven't seen the Wallabies look this sharp all year. Eddie Jones has promised it would come, but they've looked very promising in the early stages. This is O'Connell. George Smith is there. The ruck is formed. George Smith went on with it. You can't handle in the ruck. And that's Maggs taking it over the advantage line. Here's O'Driscoll again. Such a great step up. But they're still 45 metres out. Here's Horgan. Keith Wood on the angle. He ran into a dead end. Lyons and Smith were waiting. O'Gara again. They're kicking to Wendell Saylor's wing. And he's equal to the task. And so is Matt Rogers. What about that one? 50-metre gain for Australia.
Well, interesting tactic there by Ireland. They've done it 2 or 3 times now. Putting the ball in behind Wendell Saylor's wing, making the big fella turn around and get back to the ball. He did very well there to get back and link up with Matt Rogers, who puts a lovely kick downfield.
That's Easterby.
Terrific line-out work from Ireland. Very athletic. Paddy O'Brien's kept the gap, and they're appreciating it.
So that's Keith Wood in possession. And the referee says it was truck and trailer there. In other words, the maul wasn't formed, and the players in front of the ball carrier at the back were obstructing.
Isn't this great terminology? Truck and trailer, guard dogs, new vocabulary.
Australia by 8 here at Telstra Dome.
Isn't that fantastic work? Good skills by Easterby. Not going up in the air. He makes it look easy, being able to grab that ball and pluck it out of the air with one hand. And there the penalty comes against Keith Wood. Eddie O'Sullivan saying, I don't know what's going on.
So Eddie O'Sullivan just a bit perplexed there with that decision. But the problem for Ireland is that they did become totally detached from the Australian players. So therefore there was no more formed, and the players in front were obstructing. It was a good decision. So Flatley from a similar posse to his last success. And this will be a handy 11-point lead if successful. There's a little bit of a nervous shot on the first tee about that shot. Still 8 points the difference.
We spoke about Australia running the ball before, which is sensational, but the Irish are also doing the same. They mightn't be swinging as wide and trying to bash it up, but they're not going to go out without a fight here tonight.
So David Lyons. Rogers is telling him to point it straight up the middle, and he does that into Keith Wood. George Gregan, the captain. Larkham juggles it. And this is Dempsey. Plenty of time with this kick. And it's a goodie, taking play over the halfway line.
Well, the most important thing for Gervin Dempsey at the back tonight is to be safe under the high ball and also put the ball in front of his forward pack, and he's done that there.
When the Wallabies have involved Wendell Saylor tonight in hitting that ball up, it's been very positive and a stimulus to their play. Hopefully they don't settle back into a kicking role.
Brendan Cannon's throwing right on the mark. Here's Gregan, given leeway. And Keith Gleeson underneath Saylor that time. Larkham, flatly. Here comes Lyons. And good low tackle by O'Gara. Wallabies pursue this blindside. It's Kevin Maggs underneath. Nathan Sharp. And almost put into touch. Larkham. Hickey's rushing up. Flatley trying to weave through on the 10-metre line.
That umbrella defence that they showed in Perth.
Here's Sharp. Horgan bringing him to ground, but Australia maintaining possession beautifully here. Haven't made a lot of ground, but they're now starting to make some inroads as Smith sets it up here for his scrum half. 8 phases here. And Ireland come away. Sloppy work, Australia. This is a handy kick. Rogers in the last line as Hickey comes through. Joe Roth called for it. In space. Horgan's dropped back. And Joe won't be happy with that one. Ewan McKenzie, Eddie Jones, Glenn Ella, the Wallaby coaching brains trust. And Tony Darcy there in the background. The former Wallaby.
The big bloke up behind the coach.
Well, he coached Brendan Cannon at Brothers. And of course took Jeeps to their first premiership in Brisbane in 30 years. As well as playing rugby league for the Penrith Panthers. Here's Woods. It's O'Kelly. O'Gara. The Irish spread out here. Durbin, Dempsey. And again a very solid tackle on O'Driscoll.
Leave it now.
Keith Wood standing out in midfield. We're 25 metres out. A lot of numbers here on the left. No arms in the tackle there from Smith. Ireland still going though. This is Max. He only knows one way.
O'Gara, he would have felt that bone-jarring stuff from Smith.
And that's big O'Connell.
Terrific. O'Gara, he would have felt that bone-jarring stuff from Smith.
And that's big O'Connell.
Terrific continuity from Ireland. Still not deterred. Taking it forward now, spreading it.
And Foley makes sure he holds on to that one after dropping an earlier ball. Australia interfering on the ground.
Australia are making mistakes, but Ireland are going one out. There, they just kick it away. They want to get the penalty.
So Australia conceding some easy point-scoring situations here for their opponents. And this one is right out in front of the goalpost. It should be a formality for Ronan O'Gara. And he's just signifying now that he's going to have another attempt. It's Australia still maintaining that lead by 11-3.
See number 2, Brendan Cannon on the ground. Very difficult to get away from that situation.
So Paddy O'Brien has signified that he wants real urgency from the tacklers to move away after they effect the tackle. And O'Gara closes the gap to just 5 points at Telstra Dome. It's Australia 11 leading Ireland 6.
You'd have to say the momentum has been lost for the Wallabies. Ireland have carried the ball deep into their territory and the Wallabies have been kicking badly too often. And the momentum has swung in Green's favour at this stage.
Well, Ireland have shown a greater focus to play the ball in the opponent's half, and that's paid off for them over the last 10 minutes. Here's Smith. Absolutely hammered. But Australia have it now for Larkham. Here's Burke cut out and Rogers and Saylor one-on-one. Hickey stays with his man. Rogers cleans out and Ireland just there in numbers. And it looks as though they've forced a turnover. Well, that's great play by the Irish. This is the fittest and best prepared Irish team ever. They've had an open checkbook for this World Cup campaign, and they've won 18 of their last 20 test matches. But Australia just outgunned there at the breakdown.
Very early on tackle by Dennis Hickey to put Wendell Sailor down, who was in space. And we see the Irish players come in, and O'Gara fires his forwards up. They know they've got the momentum with them now.
That's a little psychological advantage there. They must gain a boost from that.
Absolutely. Committed clean out, and then the tear-down. Australia were starting to look as though they were establishing rhythm. Now they've got to go back to the line out, see if they can pull down some clean ball and get it moving again.
Australia lucky there. There was no way that ball was straight as they went short at the front of the line out. 10-metre line. And another penalty coming here. Both sides infringing. Larkham says we'll run it. And David Lyons loves that. Matt Burke comes in to clean out. Here's Gregan. He's going to kick it out in the full because he wants the penalty.
To me, that should not be allowed in this game. If they're giving the opportunity for Australia to have advantage, they've got to play with the ball, they've got to run it. If they deliberately kick it out, they should lose the advantage.
Well, the scary part is some of the referees so far in the tournament have been saying advantage over when you're given a penalty in goal-kicking range. So, you know, it's a catch-22 situation.
Well, that's where that's got to be an issue with the referees on their interpretation.
No, it's really difficult. The tackle, if he's going to land there, he'll take all the risks in the business. If he's going to land on the other side, he's fine. If he's going to land there, it's all the risks. Now I'm starting to talk serious. Penalties only at the moment. Thanks, guys.
Clear warning from the referee. Don't lay on the wrong side of the tackle player.
5 points the difference at Telstra Dome. So Larkham. So Australia deciding not to have a shot for goal there. Instead, the line out. Positive move by George Gregan. It was right at the limit of Flatley's goal-kicking range. Who wants it? O'Gara does. And expert delivery now for his scrum half. O'Driscoll. He got something on that one. That was Matt Rogers' proportions. Rogers has a quick line out to himself. Roth links. That's Dempsey to O'Gara. Can kick it out on the full from inside his 22. And that's a big game for the Australians.
Well, what would the coaching staff of Australia be thinking at this stage? 3.5 minutes to go before half-time. You would have thought the Wallabies may have put some more points on the board. They're in a good attacking zone now, 40 metres out, shorter line out, and moving David Lyons out wide with the backs.
3.5 minutes to go. This is where Australia have got to lift the gear. They've got to get points before half-time, put the Irish away. But they won't when they lose line-outs like that.
So they've taken 2 line-out balls from the Wallabies, and this is O'Driscoll out wide for Hickey. Got away from Sailor. But Elton Flatley was across just in case, as was Matthew Burke.
Well, it's good to see the Irish moving the ball all during the week. There's been a lot of talk about how the fly halves would run or kick. And they've picked Ronan O'Gara, and he's moving the ball wide and picking up the players of the likes of O'Driscoll and Horgan.
Gregan for Larkham. Sailor's joined the line here. He adopts the steamroller approach. Phil Waugh was in his pocket. Here's Larkham. Rogers out wide. Roth sandwiched. O'Gara, no fullback. Chases on for Horgan. He's got the legs, but the ball goes over the touchline just as well for the Wallabies.
Australia have the momentum, and that is the 5th time the Australians have been in the Irish half, and they've turned it over, letting off the pressure. Big
Great
defence by
defence.
Dempsey.
By Driscoll. Great Driscoll, a beauty. And a great kick down. And this is really emotional charge up for Ireland if they can go into the break, if they can close this gap just a little bit closer.
George Smith, surprise line-out winner there. But the Wallabies have just lost their way over the last 15 or 16 minutes as Larkham just scrambles the ball into touch, and it's